I want to talk briefly about the question of whether Israel is right or wrong to fight Hamas in Gaza and what is really going on at the moment in Gaza. I'm doing this because there is an abundance of confusion, misinformation, ignorance and lies, mainly due to the hostility of the world's media. More lies are told and more nonsense is spoken about Israel than about the rest of the world combined. So why then are attacks being made by Israel against Gaza? It's simply because rockets are being fired from Gaza into Israel. So the Gaza Strip is a small area of land in the south of Israel, which is populated by Arabs and which is self-governing. But although it's run by Hamas, who were elected into office, they are firing weapons into Israel. Now these are being fired randomly. They're not aimed at anything in particular. Fired randomly into populated areas, landing wherever they happen to land, which I regard as something that makes it worse, not better. If they were firing them at military bases, you could sort of understand it, but they're firing them into civilian areas with the deliberate intention of causing civilian deaths. So why then are they not causing many civilian deaths? And why are so few Israeli children being killed? Again, it's simple. Because the Israelis hide their children away in bomb shelters, whereas the Arab children in Gaza are being deliberately put in harm's way by Hamas. What do I mean by that? Simply this. There are two principal things that the Hamas are doing. They are deliberately placing children alongside or even underneath where they have their rocket launchers. So that is, the rocket launchers are literally on the roof of schools, nurseries, clinics, and in residential areas generally. Secondly, what they're doing is when Israel actually give warnings about where they're going to attack, and that's come into being because Israel wants to avoid casualties to civilians and children in particular. So unlike any other army or air force, it gives warnings of the fact that it's going to be attacking. When those warnings are given, Hamas prevents people removing their children from harm's way. They want the Arab children to be in harm's way for two reasons. Number one, because they want to deter Israel from firing at their rocket launchers. But secondly, because they want, in the event that there are civilian casualties or children being killed, to use it as a media advantage, to use it to their advantage. Now, whoever heard of an army or air force warning people of its attacks? We never did it in World War II. We never told the Germans which cities we were going to be bombing each night. On the contrary, we wanted maximum surprise. The Israelis are the only people who've ever done that, and yet they are criticised in scathing terms for doing what no other country would do, giving warnings when no one else would do that. As for why does Israel fight? Why do they fight against Hamas? For the simple reason that they're being attacked. Now, Great Britain, when it was attacked in a much smaller way by Argentina in 1982, they seized the Falkland Islands. We instantly went on the counterattack and sent a task force to seize back the Falkland Islands. But our national defence, our national homeland, was never in any danger. And yet we still did that, and very few people would say that we did wrong. But Israel faces a complete existential threat. That is, if they don't fight for their survival, they will cease to exist. That's how stark it is. Remember, thousands of rockets are being fired from Gaza into Israel. What would we do if that was happening here? Would we just sit back and let it happen? So why then isn't there any peace in the Middle East? Why do things like this happen, and why do they continue to happen? Why don't the sides, both sides, lay down their arms and have peace? Well, Israel would love to disarm. It spends a fortune out of its gross domestic product on defence. and its population has to spend many years in the Army and Air Force, including carrying on as reservists afterwards. If it could downscale its armed forces, it would love to do so. The problem is that if it did, the Arabs would attack and destroy Israel. They've already done so in 1948, 1967 and 1973. In each of those years there were full-scale wars when Arab nations surrounding Israel attacked without warning with the express objective of destroying Israel and causing it to cease to exist. Since that time, in many other ways, there have been smaller attacks on Israel by suicide bombers, by snipers, by rocket attacks. It's been a continual thorn in the side of Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, said, "If the Arabs laid down their arms, there would be no war. But if Israel laid down her weapons, there would be no Israel." It's as simple as that. Now, why is there this danger facing Israel? It's because the Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO, and Hamas, and indeed Islam in general, are all committed to destroying Israel. It's central, indeed, to the PLO charter. It's written into their very charter in 1964 when they were formed, that they want to cause Israel to cease to exist, to destroy it. Now, can you imagine us in Great Britain making peace with Germany in 1945 or 1918 if the Germans had had it as part of their very constitution that they were committed to destroying Great Britain? It would be a non-starter. And yet that's the position that Israel faces. That's the reality. So why not begin to look into the real facts? Don't assume that what you hear in the media is true. Most of it isn't true, or at least it's incomplete or slanted. Begin to read up on the history of the conflict in the Middle East. And why not also listen to the other talks that I'm giving on YouTube about the background and reasons for the present situation, and also how the Jewish people came back to their land during the 20th century and the origins and causes of this conflict.